Hello guys, welcome back to another podcast on the channel. Today's topic for the podcast is going to be who we think our biggest winners and losers are at this current point in the season. We're going to be comparing the table so far this year to where the teams finished last season, and just going to be having a pretty chilled out, relaxed discussion of who we think is doing really, really well and overachieving, and those who we think are underachieving. I'm here with Byron today. And without further ado, I reckon we just get straight into it. Looking first of all at the winners and who we think is overachieving this season. I think for the first one, that you can't help but look past West Ham and David Moyes. They finished 16th last year, finished on 39 points, and are currently sat in fourth with 35, 4 points off their total tally from last year. I don't know about you, Byron, but they've just come out of nowhere for me. Right, I haven't really taken much notice of them since the last week or so, and they've just shot up to fourth out of nowhere. It's quite something.
I mean, yeah, they've been on a really good run. Like, I think it's 4 wins and 1 draw in their last 5 games, and I think they've been consistent all season, and that's quite an incredible stat. The fact that they're only 4 points worse off than what they finished last season, finishing 16th in the Premier League, currently in 4th. I don't think they'll stay in that position, but they're safe in the Premier League for another year. And I think that's what West Ham's ambition were at the start of the year that they went into, because they didn't really sign anyone of any note apart from Ben Rama. They didn't really spend any money. However, Thomas Souček has been an extraordinary player for them this season, and adding that to like Declan Rice, Cresswell and things like that, they've definitely upped their game. And David Moyes, it looks like the Everton team of 10 years ago that he had them. He was always looking sort of top 10 and pushing those Champions League spots. And if you can get West Ham back to that position, like regularly in the top 10, I think West Ham fans will be very happy and look forward to good seasons with him in the future.
Yeah, I think there's so much to talk about with West Ham, from my opinion, because they've obviously had the new stadium there, fairly recently took over the Olympic Stadium, setting a massive foundation for what is a very big club, personally, I think, in English football. And they should be doing a lot better than what they've done over the last years. I think the difference from last year to this year is that, like you said, they put the right amount of money in the right players, or safe amount of money in the right players. So Souček, did he cost him anything? Or he didn't cost him much at all, I don't think. Ben Rama's from the Championship, but he was proven in the Championship, definitely one of the best talents there. And then, like you say, put that with players like Cresswell, Antonio up front, who is just a bulldozer, and he's scoring tons of goals this year. It just, everything's clicking. And going back to Souček, Moisey's got his Fellaini back, isn't he? Like you say, like his Everton team of past, he's got his Fellaini, and he's box to box, he's scoring goals. And do you know what? I think he might be one of the signings of the year. I really do. I think every time I watch him, he's brilliant, really, really good. And having him and Declan Rice in the middle, you know, bit of an unpopular opinion, I'm not a huge fan of Declan Rice. I don't think he does anything spectacular, but he's definitely a promising talent, and he does a good job, definitely a very good job in that West Ham midfield.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think what West Ham have done well this year is, I think that without fans, it's been helpful for David Moyes. I think the way they started the season, I mean, they lost 3-0 in the opening game to Newcastle, and both teams look a long way from that situation. You know, I mean, Newcastle look awful, West Ham look a lot better. And I remember their form picked up straight away. That in the game against Arsenal, I think it was the 3rd game of the season, they were better than Arsenal, and they should have won that game. And I personally think West Ham could be doing even better than they are currently. Now, there's been a few games like the Arsenal one where I think they had better opportunities, probably should have won. And there was a Manchester United game where it wasn't until late on, sort of the last 20 minutes, that Manchester United really upped it and got a foothold in the game and scored goals and came back to win the game. But they've done well getting players like Haller out as well. I think, like, it's very easy to create bad influences and have problems with players at clubs, and if you don't get them off your books, it can cause serious issues. And I think that what they've done well now is they've got a group of players that David Moyes trusts, and they're really working hard for him. And like you say, he's got his Fellaini back with Souček, and he's doing incredibly well from midfield and from set pieces. He's really helped them this season.
Yeah, I think I forgot to mention Jarrod Bowen as well. He's contributing loads, and again, didn't cost him a lot. Came from Hull, had sort of an inconsistent year last year, didn't he? He didn't really play too much, but now he's really starting to get into that starting 11 and prove a name for himself. But it helps. I think anyone who has Aaron Cresswell in their fantasy team knows how much of an influence that guy is. And like you say, with the set pieces, they've just got such big lads, and Antonio, Souček, the centre halves of Bonner. With a person delivering the ball like Cresswell does, there's always going to be danger. And just I think all the pieces are coming together. And I think people younger than us will not realise how good of a manager David Moyes actually once was. Like you say, with that Everton team, he was overachieving for years with Fellaini, Tim Cahill, was it Phil Jagielka there at one point, Leighton Baines, all those boys, Tim Howard. Like, he had a really good team there, and you're starting to see him put his pieces together in the puzzle at West Ham, and it's going really, really well for him. Like you say, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep it up for the whole year, especially in fourth in the top four. But if they can finish top 7, 8, I think that's a massive season for them, considering where they finished last year.
Yeah, well, yeah, at the halfway point, they are definitely a winner in this season because they finished 16th last year. I think even if they finished top 12, I think West Ham fans would take that, David Moyes would take that, and everyone, and then they can press. And now you've mentioned it, really does say to me that David Moyes has gone back to a solid foundation of English players that are getting him results, and they've sort of got rid of some of the foreign players, and David Moyes is just performing so well, I think, at that West Ham team, and people won't give him the credit that he deserves, but he's doing a really good job.
No, definitely. And like you say, we'll see if it continues. But let's move on now to another Claret club in West Ham, in Aston Villa. Now, they're currently down in 10th in the table, but they have games in hand. They've been affected by COVID as well. They finished, angers me to say it, they finished 17th last year, relegating us with that ghost goal. Was it against Sheffield United? Angers me to say it till this day. But they managed to stay up by the skin of their teeth, and they are currently sat in 10th. Now, I have no idea why. I have no idea how. They made some great signings, don't get me wrong, in Ollie Watkins and that Bertrand Traore. But Dean Smith, he's controlling a different animal in that Villa team this year, and they are giving almost every single team that they're playing a run for their money. I can't remember the last time they got blown out the water. And if I'm wrong in saying that, it might have been the other week. But off the top of my head, I can't remember the last time they got blown out of the water in a game of football in the Premier League. So they're doing great. I don't know what you think of them, but again, just massively overachievers for me.
No, again, like, people say that they should have got relegated last season. It was only a dodgy goal line decision system that sort of maybe kept them in the league. But I completely agree. I don't think that they have been blown out of the water by anyone this season. In fact, they've been doing it to other teams. They beat Arsenal 3-0, completely walked all over us. Liverpool 7-2, which everyone was thinking that was an incredible shock result at that time. And it is a shock result to beat the Premier League champions 7-2. But the form that they've shown since then, it doesn't look as crazy as it did when we first saw it. And they've been very, very consistent this year. And I think that's down to, like, they've signed players that are really good on top of the good players that they already had. You think of, like, Tyrone Mings was doing really well in his first season, like getting his England call up. You think John McGinn, a consistent as ever player in the central midfield, and Jack Grealish has just stepped up to a new level. He's really showed everyone how good he is this year, and people say that he could get in any team in the Premier League, and I don't think that's a wrong statement to make, to be honest. And then they've added Emi Martinez. It's the number of clean sheets that they're keeping as well that is massively helping them to stay confident, to believe that they can stay in games, and to believe that they can get a result from any game against any opposition.
Yeah, and I think it's a similar situation to West Ham, in my opinion, where they've put money and not a lot of it in the right places. You look at Matty Cash at right back, Martinez from Arsenal, you've got Ollie Watkins, Bertrand Traore. Every single one of those players has started almost every single game and played out their skin. So the investment in the summer, I think, was really massive for them. And I think, to be honest, I think they had to do it, or else they were going to really struggle this year. And I know Ollie Watkins is missing chances at the moment, but the fact he's getting in the positions to, he's not an old player, is he? He's still relatively young. He's mid-20s, and his first year in the Premier League, I think, has been brilliant. He works really, really hard, and I think that's it for Villa. They just all work really, really hard for Dean Smith, and they all.
And I think that's bang on. When you're talking about Ollie Watkins missing chances, I think you're right in that sense. But Dean Smith, when they played Crystal Palace, I think it was, and Tyrone Mings got sent off, Dean Smith said that he wouldn't have rathered any other player, any striker in the Premier League to play up front than Ollie Watkins. And it's what he brings you. And all of the signings that you mentioned, including Ross Barkley as well, have English football experience. I mean, Emi Martinez has been in and around English football for 10 odd years. Matty Cash has been in the Championship. You think of Bertrand Traore, had a spell at Chelsea, knows the league. Barkley's been in English football his career, and Watkins has come from the Championship. It shows you that they're trusting in they're signing players, smart signings that know the league and understand English football better than anyone.
Yeah, no, and it makes you think. It makes you think when you've got teams like Chelsea out there who are pumping 80 odd million into these German players, which, don't get me wrong, and we've spoken about this on the first podcast we've done, they're not bad players. I think before they came to the Premier League, they were great. But it makes you think, is it worth, chucking all this money at the foreign players when you've got proven talent in the league that no one's willing to take a gamble on? It does seem really strange. And, we're not talking about Southampton in this podcast, but I think another one's like Kyle Walker-Peters for them. They signed him for 10 million. 100%. And I think he's brilliant. I think he's lights out good for them, and he's completely changed their team this year. He looks like a young, well, not even a younger, just like a lesser version of Alexander-Arnold at right back for them. Similar sort of attacking play and delivering ability. It just makes you. I know this isn't what we're talking about today. It's a bit of a side note, but it makes you think why the clubs pump all the money into the foreign players.
I mean, Tariq Lamptey's another one as well.
Yeah, Lamptey. I don't know.
And he's come from Chelsea. I mean, and they've got a different route. And the best performances that Chelsea have had are from those English players. I mean, Mount, Chilwell. And I know we're not talking about it, but it's the foreign players that are underperformed. So that's why I think Villa and West Ham have got it absolutely spot on this season, and they've really done well. So I think, they're definitely a winner as well this season. So moving on to another winner, what do you think about Leicester? I think it's difficult to call them a winner now, because I consider them to be a big club. I consider them to be a bigger club, or a bigger team at least at the moment, than Arsenal. I mean, they proved it for a couple of seasons that they're the ones that are challenging for top four football. They're the ones that are being consistent in the league. So them being third at the moment, and they finished fifth last season and probably should have got top four last season, but they threw it away. It's difficult to consider them they're a winner, because they're just doing what they've been doing for a while now.
I think Leicester, and this might get a few people raising their eyebrows, are the best run football club in the Premier League. And I know that sounds a bit dodge, because you've got massive establishments and business-like clubs like United and Liverpool. But I think the way Leicester go about every single season, every single year, their recruitment of managers, their recruitment of players is second to none. I think it's so good. You look at Brendan Rodgers, I think he's one of the top 3 managers in the league. I think he's one of the best managers in the world. You look at their recruitment of players, they got Maddison in, who I think is elite good. I think he's very, very good. Vardy from Leicester, I know you're going back here, but just players. That Fofana from France looks ace.
It's great recruitment.
And, you could just name every player in the team, couldn't you? That Castagna they got from Italy. You could just name every player in the team and just go, yeah, what a buy, what a pickup, Soyuncu. But they just do everything right. How can you not like Leicester unless you're a local rival of them? I think they're one of the most likable teams in the league. I love watching them. I love a lot of their players. I love Brendan Rodgers. And like you say, we're talking about overachieving here. I think compared to last year, they're overachieving, but they're up there for me now. It's like a top 5-6 club in the league, and one of the best in Europe. I really do think.
Going back to what you said on them being the best run club in England, I don't think that's a crazy statement to say, to be honest. When you look at their title-winning season and some of the players that they had in that team. You know, like your Drinkwaters, Harry Maguire? No, Harry Maguire wasn't there, but like Drinkwater, N'Golo Kante, Mahrez, Harry Maguire came later. But all of these players have been and gone, and somehow they find a way to replace them with cheap or relatively cheap players, but of immense quality. You think of like Tielemans, how he hasn't been spotted by higher teams in the Premier League, like Soyuncu, like how he wasn't picked up. Fofana, another kid that, like you mentioned, hasn't. They seem to find like diamonds in the rough from all over. Right, and yeah, Pereira, another one, exactly. Like no matter who they sell, you know, I mean, Mahrez, Kante, whoever it is, and these players have gone on to be successful at other clubs, and they are very good players. They get a lot of money. You think of Ben Chilwell as well, Harry Maguire, 80 million. They get a lot of money for their players. They sell them on. They wish them the best, and then they bring in a younger or a cheaper player, and then they just push on again, and they just push up the league table, and they are looking really, really good for top four this season. And yeah, the best run club in England is quite an obvious statement at this point.
Yeah, I don't think it's even outrageous to say that they're not in the they might be in the title race. You know, I don't think that's an outrageous thing to say. I think with Vardy, maybe with Vardy out now, maybe, because I don't think Iheanacho does the job for them up front on his own. But you've got players like Harvey Barnes playing out like the best football he's ever played, along with like Maddison, Tielemans, like you say, and Didi. We haven't mentioned him. What a find he was. Unbelievable player.
Well, this is it. It's just that they sign players out of the blue that, I mean, you hear of them and you hear them being linked to bigger football clubs, but it never progresses. And then they sign them and they come in and they do an incredible job. And and I think Brendan Rodgers is a manager that makes players better. I think he did that at Liverpool. I think he's done that when he was at Swansea, like very early on. And I think he's proving it again now at Leicester. He makes players individually better, and he also gets them playing in a team. And yeah, I think the title race is a little bit too far for them, but with the inconsistencies from everyone in the Premier League this season, it's a push, but it's not out of the question for sure.
Yeah, and talking about other good managers, then let's move on to Everton. Carlo Ancelotti. Like, I don't think anyone saw that coming. Everton going and getting Carlo Ancelotti was it the start of the season or was it last year? Can't even remember. Was it halfway through last year?
It was midway through last season.
Yeah, so it was midway through last year. No one saw that coming. You're like, what on earth's going on? For me, they're a bit of an anomaly to this whole like English talent, right? They've got English talent, and obviously in Calvert-Lewin and Keane at the back, and say what you want about Pickford, but I think they've got some really good foreign players who play out their skin for them. You look at James, he's coming back into form a little bit now. He went for a funny patch. Richarlison, I think, is an animal. I think he reminds me a bit of, I know he's not as big, but he reminds me a bit in terms of temperament of Diego Costa when he was in the league. Sort of just not afraid of anything, just go at anything. You know, players like that, Digne, and they've got all these foreign players who actually play really well for them, and they go against the grain a bit, and they bring Ancelotti in, and you're all there like, what on earth is this? But they're up in, what is it? What do we note down that they're in? Seventh, yeah. They finished 12th last year. I think they've got a game in hand or maybe one or two. And they are looking good and semi-consistent. And if Calvert-Lewin can carry on scoring goals, where could they finish this year? I don't know. It's so close up there. It's hard to tell. But for me, I think they're overachieving. Well, not overachieving, just a winner. I think they're just doing really well.
No, yeah, I think go back to when Carlo Ancelotti was picked up by Everton. You know, I mean, Arsenal were without a manager at that time, and you think Carlo Ancelotti had his problems at Napoli, and there was lots of rumours about him leaving when Arsenal were looking for a manager, and you think Carlo Ancelotti would be the perfect fit for Arsenal. Somehow Everton have done a madness and managed to pull getting him into the club off. And he's just a great manager. You know, I mean, he's got a history of winning, history of making teams better, and yeah, it's like you say with the foreign talent. What he's done is he's gone out and signed players that he knows. You know, he signed the like you say James Rodriguez, who he knew from Real Madrid. He's just brought in players to add to an already good group, which Everton have done poorly in the past. You know, I mean, you think of like Sigurdsson for 50 million. I know he's an okay player, but that's too expensive. They've made mistakes with like Cenk Tosun. They've made mistakes with players in the past. Whereas Carlo Ancelotti said, no, look, I'm going to sign players I know if you give me the money. I'm going to bring in talent that I've witnessed and I can get the best out of, and I'm going to push you up the table. And I think when I saw the signings that they made, I thought seventh was about where they'd be, but they could definitely push on and potentially look into the top six as well, I think.
Yeah, I just love Carlo. I don't know what it is about it. It reminds me of all like you see. I don't know if you've watched the footage of like the Italian football in Serie A in the 90s, where it was like the biggest league in the world. You've got the managers on the sideline smoking and stuff. It just, he's so old school, man. And I love how sort of like he's like the Godfather or something, isn't he, of the Premier League? And he just brings so much swagger and to a very unswaggeristic club. I don't want to disrespect Everton in saying that, but they've just been a bit sort of very David Moyes in that respect for a long time. And then he's come along and brought in flair players like James and got the best out of Richarlison and stuff. And now starting to look at them and go, okay, maybe they're coming back into it. But we'll leave that there for the moment. I think the last thing, or the last club that we should quickly mention that we've spoken a lot about recently in a pod before, so we won't go into too much detail about it, is Manchester United. Now, last night couldn't have come at a worse point for us to record this podcast, but I think they are definitely winning this year. Whether it be playing bad or good, they are up there and they are in contention, and people are actually starting to talk about them as potential title contenders. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's just how it is at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I think that they're definitely a winner this season. You know what I mean? You look at last season, they finished on the same points as Chelsea, level for third. And yeah, and you look at what's happened to Chelsea this year. It's like they've gone one way, Chelsea have gone the other. And it's Man United are always going to be a big club. They'll always find a way to get back to the top of English football because it's just what they are. But I never thought that they'd be able to do it with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer like in charge or at the wheel, as Rio likes to say. Yeah. But they're definitely winning this year. I think that, like you say, the result against Sheffield United last night it sort of put a bit of a dampener on it. But they're considering themselves a big club again, and I think everyone around the league is sort of looking at them, saying that they are getting back to title contenders and problems for the other top six.
Yeah, I think it was only earlier actually we were saying that they're getting their mentality back. It's a mentality thing, isn't it? I think over the last sort of 4 to 5 years, even since Fergie left, their mentality went and they just didn't believe that they could achieve anything. And now you look at that squad as well. If they get their mentality right, you can't see them not challenging with players like Bruno, Pogba, Cavani, Rashford, all of them. Like, they've got an incredible squad. They really do. And like you said, if the mentality's right, they're going to be up there. We'll see in the second half of the season. That loss to Sheffield United is a terrible one and one that could be an issue for them. I think we'll find when they play you boys at the weekend and how they react and bounce back is going to be how their season will continue.
I think with what you're saying with the mentality thing, I think it'd be very interesting to see how they approach the game against Arsenal at the Emirates on the weekend, because if they come to the Emirates and they have that big club mentality, big sort of like title contender mentality, they'll come and they'll try and bully us, they'll try and steamroller us, dominate the game, dictate all of the football and just win the game comfortably. And it'll be interesting to see with the Sheffield United loss whether they sort of like do what they did at Old Trafford earlier in the season against us, which is sit off and try and play on the counter-attack and let us have all of the ball. Because I think that they're sort of getting away from that sort of mentality of being a bit worried when they play the other big teams. They need to start being like believing in themselves as a big team now and a big club, and sort of bullying, say, like the lower teams in the top six, like Arsenal, like Chelsea, start really getting on top of them, like Man City and Liverpool do.
Yeah. Okay, so talking about their loss to Sheffield, then I think it's only appropriate we move on to who we think are losing at this point in the season. I think those 5 teams in West Ham, Villa, Leicester, Everton, and Manchester United, I think those are our 5 sort of winners at this point in the season, especially West Ham. I think they're a big winner in my eyes. But let's now move on to the losers. So there's probably more in terms of how teams are playing losers than what we've got here today. But I think talking about their win against Manchester United, they've got to be the biggest losers, and they Sheffield United in last position. What is it? 8 points, 1 win. Is it 1 win? 2 wins? 2 wins now.
2 wins now.
Yeah, 2.
With
But they've only
United
come.
and Newcastle.
They've only come recently, haven't they? Those 2 wins. And,
yeah.
I don't know if I feel sorry for Chris Wilder because he seems like a nice bloke, but their squad is just crap. And if they aren't playing well, then they've got nothing, have they? They're just a real struggle.
Yeah, they're definitely the biggest losers, I think, this season. Because where did they finish last season? Was it 9th?
I've gone down as 9th, yeah, 9th last year.
Yeah, 9th. So finished top half last season, which was a massive achievement for Chris Wilder and that squad in their first season in the Premier League after being promoted. To start this season and only pick up 2 wins from 18 odds is really poor. And for those 2 wins to come very recently, I personally think that they have a bad squad, or not a bad squad that isn't like Premier League caliber. But I think if like they have a certain mentality at Sheffield United, I feel like that they're such a team that if they do get a bit of confidence, they can really start stringing some results together and potentially even like creep out of the bottom 3. I know it sounds stupid and it sounds crazy to say that, but I think that they have such a team ethic that if they do get a bit of confidence, that they could start stringing a few results together and potentially creep up on teams like Newcastle, who are looking awful, West Brom, who look in banging trouble, and potentially make it like less awful, like, you know what I mean, make it less bad. Like they look like they were going to be the worst team ever in the Premier League at one point, like in terms of the amount of points that they attained.
Which they're not.
But they're definitely not. But I do think that they can string some results together and potentially push up the table. But getting out of the top 3 does seem like a very too far, and it does seem like an impossible task.
I think the big difference for them between last season and this season has got to be the fans, right? I feel like they fed
100%
massively, because it's a very loud stadium, isn't it? Is it Bramall Lane? I think it is Bramall Lane that they play.
Bramall Lane,
yeah. It's a very loud stadium. Their fans are mad, like they get proper behind them. And I feel like the team last year with Wilder, who is a Sheffield boy, just everything was so like community driven, wasn't it? Like everything was Sheffield United there, like there was no division anywhere, and it was all so united and in sort of their drive up the table. And with the fans not there this year, I think it's just gone a bit flat, and they've really struggled. I think in terms of their team, I think their team when playing well is competitive, and again it's the same situations. There's not one player in that team who doesn't work hard when they're playing well, but I feel like when they're not playing well, they have, it's not like when you look at teams like your West Hams and Evertons, who have players in there that if they're not having a good game, they like as a team they can still sort of pull something out the bag, whereas I think Sheffield's team isn't at the level that they've got players who can do that.
No, yeah, when everyone's not working at 110% every game, they'll find it difficult, and without the strikers up top to make the difference, I like they've got Ollie Burke up there, they've got Ryan Brewster, who's still very young and is new in the Premier League, McBurney as well. That they've got players that have got quality, but not at the level of Premier League, or not going to score you 15, 20 goals a season. No. So hopefully the Manchester United result for Sheffield will really just boost the whole team's confidence, get everybody back on board who potentially were thinking about maybe, it might be time to jump ship, you know what I mean, thinking about in the summer where they're going to be moving on to, because they know Sheffield United are going down. This result might sort of pull them all back together as a group and really help them.
Yeah. Well, let's talking about pulling together as a group. let's talk about our second biggest loser this season, which has to be Chelsea. We'll talk about it briefly because, again, we've done a pod on it before. A lot's changed since that pod, though. Super Frank, who we were saying might stay, might be given to the end of the season, it is no more. Thomas Tuchel's come in, taken his place. Quite obvious appointment, don't you think, with the German players? They're desperate to get something out of the players that they paid mad money for in the summer. But in terms of coming together as a team and as a group, something needs to gel there, and it needs to gel quickly if Chelsea want results. And from what I saw, was it last night? It wasn't very inspiring at all in their 0-0 result with Wolves. So I don't know what your opinions are on that, but Tuchel coming in, Chelsea, definitely my second biggest loser this year.
Well, he only had 24 hours in charge, to be fair to Tuchel. True. So, yeah. I mean, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But, I mean, I think the reason Frank Lampard got sacked is because Thomas Tuchel was available. I don't think Frank Lampard gets sacked if Thomas Tuchel isn't right there staring Chelsea in the face with their German contingent that they've signed, because it's at the point where the board or whatever are worried about their marquee signings, the money that they've spent. Are they going to be flops? And they don't want it to. They wanted to bring in Thomas Tuchel to sort of like not be made to look like idiots by signing Werner and Havertz for so much money. But yeah, they're definitely the biggest losers. They finished again in the top 4 last year. And it's like with Manchester United have gone one way, they've continued to improve, and they made some signings, Manchester United, whereas Chelsea have made a lot more and spent a lot more money than Manchester United in the summer. But Chelsea have gone the other way. They've gone down the table, and they now sit level on points with Arsenal. And I remember Chelsea fans sort of like jumping all over that earlier in the season when we were having a bit of poor form. And I like thinking about it now, I wonder what those Chelsea fans are thinking, because they, like you say, the result against Wolves was very uninspiring. They had lots of possession, but they didn't really look like doing anything with it. So Thomas Tuchel will have to wait and see what he can do with them and if he can get them playing, because if he does, then they could push on and maybe make a late run for top 4 this season. But if he can't get them playing, then they would have had a very, very poor season.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that got Frank sacked, is the amount of money they spent. I think if they don't spend as much money, I don't think the pressure's there. I think it also, again, the fact that Tuchel was right there to have the day after, on the day that Frank gets sacked, I think didn't help his cause either. But they're definitely, something just ain't clicking there. And it's such a weird dynamic, because I really like how Ben Chilwell is playing this year, and a couple of their players I really think, like Mount, are doing really, really well. But they just can't do it, can they? And we're not going to sit here and talk about Frank Lampard getting sacked the whole time, but we saw a stat the other day about the expected goals. They saw the chances they were creating under Frank, and the chances were being created a lot more than most other teams in the league. I think, what was it, 4th or 5th in expected goals in the league, which is where you think Chelsea should be, but the goals aren't just going in. And to be fair, that's not just on Werner. Tammy Abraham's missed a few as well, in all fairness to him. Giroud hasn't been playing as much, whether that be he's fallen out with whoever, or he just isn't performing in training. So I don't know if it's the players, I don't know if it's the management, but I tell you what, it's one big old mess, I think, at Chelsea at the moment. And that's why, in my opinion, I think Frank should have just been given to the end of the season, then you start fresh canvas. I don't think they're going to...
I've seen a lot going around on social media lately as well about Frank sacking, and I've seen a lot of people coming out with statements like, what's the point in even giving the job to Frank Lampard if he's only going to get 18 months in charge? And I think that is a bang on statement. Bringing in a manager that's got 1 year experience is a Chelsea legend, like the biggest legend Chelsea Football Club has ever had. Like, sacking him after 18 months in charge, it's like, why did you even bring him in the first place? It's going to take time with him. It's a process. You're building something for the future. If you want short-term fixes, if you want to get back into the Champions League straight away and so on and so forth, then bring in someone like Allegri or like Tuchel or someone that's that
Ancelotti.
Yeah, that's someone that's a proven manager.
Yeah.
In world football at doing that. Don't bring in somebody like Lampard, who the fans are going to absolutely love, but it will take time with him. I think that the statements that I've seen regarding that is like, why bring him in the first place? I bang on, and it is probably the worst day in Chelsea's history, sacking Frank Lampard. I think a lot of fans
A
are
lot of them were
hurt.
unhappy.
Yeah, I think a lot of them are unhappy, and I think a lot of them are hurting, and a lot of them are like just disappointed in everything and how it's gone down at Chelsea Football Club over the last like 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's epitomised that club ever since Roman Abramovich has come in, isn't it? That one moment where you, in his head, Roman Abramovich's head, he could have anyone in that position, and if it's not what he wants, you're gone ASAP. You know, Chelsea legend, biggest legend in the club's history, Frank Lampard, and still he wouldn't give him time. Still he wouldn't back him and believe him and put trust in him. So I think it just sums, unfortunately, sums Chelsea's sort of recent history up, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
it is what it is. And, you know, I don't think they can salvage much from this year. They're going to do really well. And, you know, Tuchel coming in might shut me up by the end of the year and they might finish top 4, but I can't see it. But we're not here to talk about Chelsea. We can talk about Chelsea and the mess there all night. Let's move on to a team I actually feel relatively sorry for because they're missing their main man in Raul Jimenez. Wolves, they are currently 13th in the table and struggling, and they finished 7th last year.
I think with Wolves, I don't think anyone's going to get too downbeat really about Wolves' situation. I think like they trust Nuno to stay there and to do a good job. And you're completely right. Without Raul Jimenez, they do look a little bit lost up front, looking for goals. Like you think of the connections with Adama Traore to Raul Jimenez, like that's where a lot of their goals came from in last season. And they had a very good year last year, finishing 7th, and it was only due to Arsenal winning the FA Cup that they missed out on European football, which would have been big for Wolves. And they've signed some really good players in the summer. They've signed young players. You think of like Semedo, Fabio Silva.
Neto.
Like they brought in, Neto. They brought in some really, really good players for the future. So I don't think anyone's getting too downbeat. They are definitely a small loser this season in terms of where they finished last year and where they currently sit, but ultimately, I don't think anyone, like I said, I don't think anyone at Wolves is too worried about where they're going. I think when they get Raul Jimenez back, they've signed that Willian Jose from Sociedad, I think, on loan as well, who maybe might help them up front because he's a big guy, he's physical like Raul Jimenez. He might bring them some quality up there. But yeah, I think it's very positive for Wolves in the future. I think with Neto, Podence, Adama Traore, they're only going to get better, these players, and they're just a well-run club, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think it's like a positive loss, isn't it, at this point in the season for them, because they're not necessarily doing bad because they're a badly run club or for things like Chelsea's reason and stuff. I think they're just unfortunate that their main man effectively is out injured with a long-term injury, and just things revolve around him so much that things are now not clicking while he's not there. I think Nuno's got one of the safest jobs in the Premier League. I think he's a very good manager. I think the only threat to him leaving is a massive club coming and nicking him, or a bigger club coming and taking him away rather than him getting sacked. And like you say, they set themselves up absolutely brilliantly for the future. I think Neto coming in and replacing Jota going to Liverpool.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, I think Neto might even have a higher ceiling than Jota, in my opinion, from what I've seen from him. So they're doing really well. They've always had a very good base squad, good set of players all the way from the back, all the way through to the attackers. And like I said, I'm not worried about them. They won't go anywhere near the bottom 3. They won't get relegated. It just might be one of those seasons where they look at it at the end and go, okay, we'll tick that one off onto the next sort of thing.
Yeah, I think if I was a Wolves fan, I would sort of be like, did really well last season, and I just look at this season and be like, oh, it's a bit of a shame. You know what I mean? It's just a bit of a shame. We haven't done as well as we did last year, but I know that we'll be pushing top 10 and we'll be back trying to fight for European places in the future, because we have got a great manager and a great squad. And I believe that they'll be back there, and I'm sure Wolves fans feel the same way. That, like you say, I think it's just a bit of a write-off this year. They've just underperformed, and maybe that is to do with something like they've got a fairly small squad, and with the amount of games that there are being played in a congested period, maybe that has just sort of like run up on them a little bit this season, and that's why they aren't as consistent as they were last season.
Yeah, and I think along that same line, I think we'll move on to our final loser, which is Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. Finished first, absolutely dominated the league last year, currently sit in 5th. I've got down here. I don't know if that's actually right. Is that right? 5th? Have you got 5th now?
No, that is right.
That is 5th. Right. There you go. I had to double check it. 5th in the league. However, they have struggled, and I'm not going to ride the Jurgen Klopp train of moaning about having every player injured, but they have had Virgil van Dijk injured for a very long time. And I think we're now starting to see with him being out how much of an integral part to that team at Liverpool he is, and how much he elevates those around him, i.e. the back four. Because you look at Trent, you look at Robbo, they haven't done or been as half as productive as they have done last year. And I think that might come with, like, I don't know if it's to do with the confidence thing, because I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and having Virgil behind you will obviously give you more confidence to bomb on forward and leave a gap behind you.
It's 100% confidence.
Whereas
without Virgil there, like Robertson and Trent just don't have confidence to bomb on as much as they did.
Yeah.
And it definitely is injuries. I mean, like, you're talking about Virgil van Dijk being the impact. If you take where Liverpool were before Virgil van Dijk signed for the club, they were in and around the sort of like 5th, 4th position. They were sort of like pushing on, but never really challenging for the title. And guess what happens when you take Virgil van Dijk out of that team? They go back to looking like they're sort of like 3rd or 4th, sort of in and around that area. Now, it has been a shame. Like, obviously, Liverpool fans would have been desperate to go again and re-challenge for the title. But when you have injuries like 3 centre-backs, Virgil van Dijk, Joe Gomez, Matip, all of them being injured, it's very difficult to be consistent. And we're, like, again, I'll mention it, we're in a season where there's a congested fixture list. It's going to be so difficult to find consistency, and without their prize asset in terms of like leader, captain, like the one that everyone runs to sort of drive them forwards, it's going to be very difficult for them to challenge for the title. And if they do manage to continue in and actually have a challenge until the end of the season, I think they'll consider it a bit of a success. But they are a loser, but I think it more comes down to like external factors in terms of injuries and things like that, rather than them just being worse than they were last year.
Yeah, I think the only way you can get at Liverpool in regards to their performances is that front three. I think Mo Salah has been carrying the goals on his back, hasn't he, really? Firmino hasn't really contributed. And Mane hasn't been half the player, really, as he was last year in terms of contributions anyway. So I think the only way you can say, okay, Liverpool are just not performing is that front three. Salah can't do it all on his own. To be fair, when he tries and does it all on his own, I think he's nowhere near it as effective. I think he needs the other two they all need to be gelling for Salah to go and excel. And I think the one game I've seen that this season is in the Palace game, where Salah came on the pitch. He started on the bench and he came on and he just ran riot. And that was the best I've seen Liverpool play this year. But yeah, I think that front three.
Yeah, they're a combination. They're a combination, like, as a front three. Like, they all help each other. They all make each other better. And again, it's like we were talking about. Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold are like the main outlets for Liverpool. Yeah, the main reason why they get goals and the main attacking threat. So it all sort of mixes into one as to why they're struggling. But I think it mainly does come down to the loss of Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Virgil and like I sort of said at the start of this Liverpool segment, we're starting to see now how much he means he means to that Liverpool team, and we're starting to see that maybe he is the best centre half in the world. No matter how many United fans might not want to admit that, or Everton fans might not want to admit that, I think he is the best centre half in the world, and a man mountain, like say a leader, and everything sort of starts from the back, doesn't it, with him? The organisation, the attacking play gives the wing backs the ability to go forward. And without him there, I think Liverpool are losing currently, but they're Liverpool and they've got the players to turn it around if they want to. So little losers, we'll call Liverpool. But we'll leave that there. I think we've covered all of the teams we want to cover, haven't we, there in terms of our winners and losers. I think before we go, I think it's only right to choose our biggest winner and our biggest loser at this point in the season. We'll do it individually, but I think we'll come up with the same ones anyway, so it won't really matter. But who do you think's your biggest winner then?
I mean, my biggest winner, it's got to be West Ham. I mean, going from 16th to 4th, in terms of where they are currently and where they finished last season, only 4 points behind their tally for last season. They've got to be the biggest winners. Whether it results in European football, it results in anything more than a higher place finish in the Premier League, I don't know. But for me at the moment, they're my biggest winners.
Yeah, I think on the whole, I agree with you there. I think if you asked me two weeks ago, I would have said someone different, because I think just the last sort of 3 or 4 games they've had, they shot up the table. And I think you were saying their form, wasn't it? Their last 5 they've played, they've won 4 and drawn 1 or something like that.
Yeah, won 4 and drawn 1, yeah.
So you look at that form, they're one of the most informed, if not the most informed team in the league. So I would agree with you, West Ham. But I will just say the fact that Aston Villa are anywhere near where they are after the season they had last year is quite incredible as well. So West Ham are definitely biggest winners for me and for you, but we will just mention Villa as being very, very close behind as well. Biggest loser then, mate. Who do you think is your biggest loser this year? There's a couple of stinkers in there, but who do you think?
Biggest loser again, I think Sheffield United. You know what I mean? From finishing in the top half to looking almost guaranteed for relegation at this point, it's gonna impact them in terms of where they're playing football next year. I think they're gonna lose out the most, and they have lost out considering where they finished last year the most out of anyone. And I mean, like, you could say Chelsea as well, because they probably won't finish inside the top 4 this year, which is a massive loss to that football club. But I think, yeah, Sheffield United getting relegated from the Premier League is makes them a bigger loser.
Yeah, I want to say Chelsea, because I think the way they handled the Frank situation stinks. I think it's really, really poor. Not because I enjoyed Frank Lampard as a player, nothing to do with that. I just think if it was any club and they dealt with it the way they have, especially the fact they had the fans on side as well, I just think that stinks. But yeah, you can't look at how bad Sheffield United have been this first half of the season, unfortunately. And no disrespect to any Sheffield United fans out there if you're listening, but your team hasn't done very well. And I don't think that you've got the players to turn it around, unfortunately, unless they go and sign someone in the next sort of few days before the window ends, who's going to come in and transform that club and that team. But sat in rock bottom, what is it? Is it 4 or 5 points off the people in front of them in 19th? Is it West Brom in 19th? So, and then another couple of points off the relegation zone. I just can't see it, mate, in my opinion. So I'm going to agree with you. Again, Sheffield United, biggest losers, but I will just say Chelsea stinks at the moment, really bad. But Sheffield United, biggest losers. West Ham, biggest winners. And I think we'll leave it there. Are you happy with everything covered?
Yeah, I agree, mate.
Yeah, that's good. We'll leave it there then. It'll be interesting to see if anyone's watching or listening, your thoughts as well. There's definitely some more losers in there. For example, Newcastle playing horrendously at the moment. And there's some more winners in there, I'm sure, as well. But all in all, I think we covered that quite nicely, with biggest winners being West Ham and biggest losers being Sheffield United. We'll leave it there then. Thank you so much for watching this week's version of the podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you on the next one. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe on any of our content across our platforms, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you so much. See you soon.
Cheers, guys.